Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Once again, my name is Suzanne Kelly, and I'm a senior planner at the City of Duluth. And on this training session, we'll be joined by Kathy Wilson, um, Hannah Figgins, and Lena Johnson. They each will be speaking later on, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves when they do so. Some of our other team that are not here include Phyllis Webb, Tom Church, and I'm going to do a quick hey, thank you to Samantha Smith, who's on this meeting as well. So once again, we appreciate everyone being here, and uh, we appreciate your attending and also all the work that you do. We see how valuable it is, and we appreciate because no one the rules would be helped without the work that you guys are doing. So thank you again, and I guess we'll begin this very exciting process. So first, as I said, welcome. I think many of you have seen some of these cartoons. They're oldies, but still goodies. They're still, I think, make a chuckle and still relevant after all these times. So what we're going to be just doing is basically HUD basics. What is HUD 101? We will talk about the 2020 application process and the 2024 contract review process and items that we see that we've had issues in the past and also how we can help improve the program. We will be able to answer any questions you have if you want to send them in the text box because we want to make sure we provide as much assistance as possible. We do appreciate everyone being here. Thank you. So one of the main things is what can we fund? HUD has the national objectives, decent housing, suitable living environment, or opportunities to expand economic opportunities. If the application cannot meet one of these objectives, then it will not be eligible for funding. HUD allocates this money, and we'll talk about the various CDBG, ESG, and home programs a little bit later. But we have these three funding sources, and we need to make sure each application can fund one of these items. If not, then they will no longer be able to be funded. And so with more specifics, I'm going to hand this over to actually Lena Johnson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lena Johnson. So here you see on your screen that HUD also has income limit requirements. So one second. Sorry, there's my screen isn't working. All right. So all HUD funding recipients must meet the income levels that you see in this table, depending on the classification of those HUD funds. And this table is both, you can be found on the Duluth city website, as well as it will be in your contract. So as many of you know, the community development programs include 3 HUD-funded programs, which are the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnership Program, often known as HOME, and Emergency Solutions Grant Program, ESG. And here are some important dates that I just want all of you guys to be familiar with in the next few months. So in terms of the 2025 application timing, September 5th is the due date for 2025 applications, and those are due at 3 p.m. So on September 5th. And then the review process will start in September and October, where Staff and Community Development Committee will review those applications. On October 22nd, the draft funding recommendations will be sent out. November 19th is when a public hearing will be held based on those funding recommendations. And then December 3rd will be the finalizing of the recommendations to City Council. And something that is new this year is we've requested some agency presentations. So the CD committee wants to hear from you guys about your applications. So we will be asking you to present an overview of your application to the CD committee. Those will be about a 3-minute overview, and you will be sent which meeting date to attend a week prior to that meeting. And so there's 2 meeting dates. One is September 17th and the other is October 1st. And the agency presentations will go in the first half of those CD committee meetings. I'll hand it off to Kathy.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Kathy Wilson. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the application document itself and where you can find all of the helpful information to be able to fill out the application. So the application form and everything else are on our website. There's the link. If you feel like following along right now on another device, there's a QR code you can scan as well. But these slides will also be posted on our website. But so you go to the website and there's a couple really important things. So there's the fillable application document, a fillable PDF that's the application that you're going to be submitting. Just reminder, make sure you download it and save it before you start filling it out so that you don't lose anything by accident. And then another couple of really helpful documents are going to be the application instructions, which will help you figure out what the questions are asking and give you more context of how to find information to answer those questions. And then the scoring criteria, which is going to be how the CD committee members are going to evaluate your responses. So both of those can really help you figure out what to talk about in your responses and how your responses are going to be scored. Next slide, please. So the application will walk you through all of this stuff. So I suggest taking a look at that and the instructions. And if you have questions, you can't quite figure out what type of activity your program is or what funding source it fits under, let us know, reach out to city staff and we can answer your questions. We can set up a meeting even to talk a little bit about it if you're having trouble figuring out that. So reach out to us earlier rather than later. And I believe on the website there is a deadline for you have to reach out to us a certain amount of time before the applications are due so that we actually have time to meet with you and answer your questions. So take a look at everything up front, make sure you know what you're going to answer. And if you have questions, definitely let us know as soon as you realize that. We're happy to talk with you. Next slide. Okay, so this is going to be in the application instructions that are on the website. So don't worry if you can't really see it in this slide, but it just is a table that
I think Kathy froze. Is that what you're saying? Okay. We'll take it off until she can join us. Anyways, as she said, these are the funding targets that are in the application. This is what the goal is for the committee to have the funds spent towards. You will notice in the application form that in economic development, there is something allocated for childcare. And in public services, there's also funding allocated for childcare or child programming. The Community Development Committee would like to see an emphasis on providing programs that can help out our younger population. And so that is something that they're looking for. That's something for this year. Next slide. Okay. Also, the application will talk about the consolidated plan. Goals and priorities, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Project readiness, narrative, impact, items that you've seen in the previous applications. All of these items do need to be addressed. These are items that need to be addressed so HUD knows that we are actually doing our work and making sure all the applications meet the goals of the community through the consolidated plan process and also our Imagine Duluth 2035 process. And then a fair housing plan, lots of plans, but all this information is on the website. Next slide. Okay, consolidated plan goals. So this has been exciting because this is our first year of our new 5-year plan. As you HUD geeks know, that every 5 years we need to do this whole planning process, and we've been working on this. And so some of the changes is on neighborhood revitalization. We talk about the importance of having social gathering areas, more connectiveness. The importance, of course, livability, but also knowing that as we know with COVID and things have happened, it's been harder for people to get together and to focus. And maybe that's one of the reasons why there's been a little more concern in mental health issues. And so there is an emphasis on livability, equality, and also just accessibility, but just gathering together area. And I think one of the committee members made it saying like, we just don't want to just stand around with something we could do at home. We need to have something to focus on to get us excited, to gather an area, emphasis. And then the other consolidated plan goals, as mentioned earlier, childcare and children's programming. Want to make sure there's more focus on those issues. The other consolidated plan goals are similar to previous year. We did update the health services, I think, to include more mental health services as well. And so those are our new consolidated plan goals first year. Okay, anti-poverty strategy policies. This also was updated for our 5-year plan. And a lot of this was similar to previous years, only we did add, I think, 2 on the next slide. And once again, this is all in the application. What we did add was increase home ownership. These are opportunities to allow people to own the home that they live in, to create more of that generational wealth, and also create sustainable independence. And this is to help people become completely independent with living, also job training. One thing that there's many things that we've been really excited the agencies have been working on, but this is different agencies working more collaborative together. Like you'll have a housing agency working with job training, where it's working with maybe a public service agency, more of the continuum or all those services together to help empower people and improve their lives. We've seen a lot of success with that, so we want to build on that as well. Next slide. Okay, the Fair Housing Plan. This is something that Kathy has been working on with Hannah and Lena, and we are currently still using the 2020 Fair Housing Plan, and that will be updated in the next couple of meetings for the new plan for the 2025 plan. However, these are still in place. And I think later on, there will be new updates when this plan comes out for next year's application process. But right now, these are the ones that need to be followed. Next slide. And as in the application, explain how funding will assist people who have historically or currently been disenfranchised, outreach methods, and this is more or less how can we make sure that the application process includes everybody and not just a checkbox? Like what is actively being done to help reach all populations? Very important in this application is be really specific on what the money is being spent on. HUD really wants to know this. What is the goal, the outcome, how will it be verified, timeline, and past performances. As you see, we have some new staff, and so we also want to make sure that whoever is reviewing the applications, it's very easy to follow. We also have some new community development committee members. Once again, makes it really easy for everyone to follow. Less questions are always the best. Thank you. Qualified census tracts. These are the areas that are designated a low MA, low moderate area. And that means if you wish to do like a public facility or something that's location based, it needs to be within one of these census tracts. This does not mean if you want to do like a housing project or help somebody who's a more public service, they can live anywhere as long as they meet those low income levels, as Lena mentioned earlier. But these are more for area specific areas, perhaps specific locations for areas that are 51 or more low income areas. When we work on the budget narrative, be really specific. Once again, HUD does look at this. So write down what the budget item is, how it's going to be funded, obviously with one of the city funds or other public funds or other private funds, and what the total amount is. And this way, it's a way to see how money is being spent. The community development committee also looks at this as well to see is everything eligible that is being asked for. Next item. And I believe I will make this over to Hannah Figgins.
Yes. Hello, Hannah Figgins here. I also work in the planning department, community development. I am going to be talking a little bit about some of the federal requirements or the requirements that are attached to the federal funds that you receive. Not all of these pertain to all projects, so I'm just going to be reviewing pretty briefly. The first is workforce development projects. If you have a workforce development project, there are this list of requirements that you will need to ensure that you meet, and the link at the bottom of this page will provide greater detail on those requirements and how you can meet them. Next is the Section 3 requirement. So for all projects that involve housing, rehab, or construction, and public facilities projects that are in excess of $200,000, you have to adhere to Section 3. And this Section 3 requirements will be discussed again later on. Okay. Any construction projects, the Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act will apply. You will also need to meet project labor agreements and community benefits program. These will all apply to your project. There's so many details that go into all of these acts and amendments, so I'm not going to go over it here, but you are always welcome to reach out to city staff for more resources or just to ask questions. Okay, next. Remember the Baba. I had to add 2 pictures of sheep in honor of Phyllis, who did this last year. For any infrastructure projects, make sure you remember Build America, Buy America Act. For all iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials used, they have to be produced in the US. Again, so many little details that would apply to this act. So be sure to follow the link at the bottom of this page to learn more. And Kathy, is Kathy back yet? No.
Okay. I could take this on, Hannah, unless you want to take it on.
Go for it, Suzanne.
Hey, well, come on. This is the exciting part for our ESGs, Emergency Solution Grant agencies. HUD has come up with a new requirement, and this is in the application. HUD would like, and as verbatim, project outcomes data measured under the performance standards developed in consultation with the COC. Yeah, and so we may actually have some of our COC people on, and they've been extremely helpful. I think you know Laura Bingbong and Courtney Cochran. Anyways, in the application, next slide would probably be easier to talk about this. There are 5 items that HUD would like us to provide a measurable on. In other words, how will these 5 items be accomplished? What we would like to do, instead of us developing how they should be accomplished, we would like the agencies that will be applying for the funding actually doing the work to tell us what would be the best way to make these happen and what would make sense and what would be realistic. So please look at this. Provide us with a very simplistic what you think a realistic measurement would be, or how to get this accomplished, and the most layman, honest ways of doing it. Send it to us, and then we're going to compile this information, and then we're going to meet with the COC, and we're going to discuss it, see what we can compile, and send it back out to the agencies. to see if they like the new draft. And then after we get that draft finalized, we will send it to HUD. So now we're on a bit of a different timing because this needs to be submitted prior to the new action plan, which won't be required until February. But we wanted to be part of this process because this all loops in together. So at this time, provide us this information and we will work with the county in developing these measurement standards that are realistic, and we do not want to be burdensome. Absolutely not at all, but we do need to comply with HUD. So please provide us with information how the best way to measure these results. And after that, we will contact you on a second meeting, probably like, I don't know, in December, of what the measurement standards should be. If you need questions on this one, feel free to give me a call. Okay. And so I'm kind of a little off since Kathy's still trying to get in. Is this where I give this back over to?
I'm back now, but I think I missed all my parts.
Oh, well, I'll let you take up another part later on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think this page is mine, so I'll take it from here. We got some final tips just to wrap up a little bit before we finish up. We just want to remind you to be concise and direct. The CD committee members don't always know everything about what happens in your agencies, so spell it out, be specific, walk us through it. You can always connect with city staff via email, phone, Teams, with any questions you have. You could even send us a draft for us to review and get feedback. If you need demographic data, we would recommend using minnesotacompass.org for those sources. And questions? I think we have another page where we're going to open it up for questions, but any immediate questions at this point? All right. Oh, I have a question. Where's my contract? Great question. It's coming this week, I hear. Word on the street is this week.
oh, I think this is me, right? Done's are done. I think this joke is hilarious. Kathy, though, was laughing at the other day, thinking it's kind of like silly. She might have used other words. Anyways, another thing that's really important, I do believe we have all current agencies UEIs. And this is, of course, the unique identity identifier. HUD requires this, and they also make sure your UIs are up to date. We will be reviewing all the UEIs as part of the contract process. If we do not have your UEI, please send it to Duluth ComDev by August 30th. This is one of those hard, we better have it before any money is allocated to an agency. So we definitely need the UEIs. If you're not familiar with UEIs or how to get one, you go to sam.gov. And I guess this is me as well. Contract review process. Yes, it is. Okay. Contract review process. Well, I think this slide kind of shows there's a lot going on. We need to do the pre-award documentation that came out with your HUD award letters, asking for the list of pre-documentation. Phyllis will be going through it. Meanwhile, as Hannah said, draft contracts will be going out. So please review the drafts and then return to them the drafts. Do not sign, because then we will use that to enter into the DocuSign process. One of the reasons why we do a bit of delay in contract review is our action plan has not been approved by HUD, so we formally can't give anything out. Nothing can be signed until HUD approves the action plan, which will hopefully happen with soon. Do not have a deadline on that one, but we're working hard on that one. So, however, make sure when you get the drafts, you review it and send it back to us. And environmental clearance. Hey, Kathy, do you want me to throw you on this one?
Sure. Environmental clearance. Every single project that gets HUD funds needs environmental clearance. If you have, for the 2024 contract year, if you have a public service or a homelessness or a economic development type of project, you likely already have environmental clearance. It'll say the environmental clearance date in your draft contract. But just remember that if you do not have environmental clearance yet, you cannot be spending any money on your project because we won't be able to reimburse you for it. So make sure you see an environmental clearance date in your contract. And if you don't see one, then get in touch with us and we can figure out why. I guess I can just keep going on this one. So for when you get your contract, we'll have some templates in the contract. It includes the templates for the cover sheet or the payment request form and the quarterly reports. But if you want fillable ones like a spreadsheet and a Word document that you can use and edit, those are going to be on our website at that link under the community development funding. So you can get that in there and let us know if you have any questions. And I know a few programs have slightly different reporting forms. And so if that's the case too, you might see something a little bit different, but the generic ones are on the website for you. And then I think I'm handing it off to Lena.
Yes. Okay, so when it comes to submitting your invoices, we also need you to submit quarterly reports on the following dates. So July 15th, October 15th, January 15th, and April 15th. And just to note that December is an important time as accounting comes to close at the end of the calendar year. You need to make sure that you get all of your invoices into us for the 2024 year. So make sure you get all your ducks in a row in December so that we can have those by that January 15th quarterly reporting date. And you can submit those to Duluth ComDev email that's listed right here. So a little bit about quarterly reporting. HUD needs you to record your racial demographic numbers. And it is very important that those racial demographics match the numbers that you put in as persons served within that documentation. Something to note is that there are 3 tabs on this spreadsheet. Make sure that you fill out each tab. All of that information is important. And that 3rd tab includes the reasonable accommodations where instances of reasonable accommodations and limited English proficiency are logged quarterly as well. And all instructions for these quarterly reports are within the spreadsheet itself. And to Hannah.
All right. Yes, thank you. So you are submitting payment requests, oftentimes at the same time that you submit those quarterly reports. Sometimes not if you somehow don't end up on that schedule. Anyhow, you'll submit a cover sheet, a summary sheet, and all appropriate documentation. Next, please. Your cover sheet will look a little bit like this or exactly like this. For now, many of you have heard that Ryan Pervenanzi is no longer working with the city. So during this interim time, we're just going to say mail it to manager, just manager, planning and development division is how you'll address the cover sheet for now, and we will update you whenever that changes. Make sure the program year is accurate. We're still dealing with 2024 contracts. And the contract number we have yet to send you, so we will do that, as well as the CD project number. The term dates need to be accurate. So it's got to be for the appropriate quarter that you're reporting for. Okay, next. This is the summary page. Make sure that the amount on the cover sheet that I just showed you matches the dollar amount on the payment request sheet. If they don't match up, we will send it back to you and ask you to do it again. And the required documentation often includes timesheets or payrolls. This can be an electronic payroll if that's how your agency works. And invoices. Oftentimes, when reviewing invoices, we see the balance just on the cover sheet is incorrect or on the summary page. We need the dates to be accurate. So anything before April 1st, we can't bill for, so we'll send it back to you. The correct program year needs to be on the front, and we need sufficient backup information. So invoice errors are such an issue that the CD committee has decided that starting in 2026, applicants who have repeated invoice issues that are maybe resistant to amendments or corrections will be given deductions of 10 points, I believe, to their final application score, which could be very detrimental to your likelihood of getting funding. So pay very close attention to your invoices. Your electronic payroll, lots of agencies are rolling into this versus manual timesheets. A note on this from Holly Anderson in our finance office. If you have been submitting electronic payrolls for 2 years or longer, you may continue to do so without signing physically. Many of you have been sending notes additionally to your electronic payrolls that say, this is my certification that the timesheet for this person is correct. If you've been doing that for more than 2 years, contact Holly, and she may give you permission to stop sending those notes with your physical signature. If you have not been doing that for more than 2 years, continue to send the physical signature is my understanding. Yeah, we may need to touch back on that. But anyhow, that's a update as of now. Okay, Kathy.
Yeah, and then this is just a reminder that we do CAPER every year, an annual performance report that records the number of people that each program served in that year. So just remember that, your quarterly reports matter. We're using those quarterly reports to fill out these numbers, and then there's a public hearing where the CD committee looks at all of these numbers and the community can look at these numbers, and then they're submitted to HUD. So also a good reminder when you're thinking of your goals, making your goals realistic, that you're actually going to be able to meet them. And as we send you out drafts to your contract, if maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to give an example. You applied for $100,000, but you only received $50,000. Make sure that you let us know if you want to update your goal in your contract, because we can review that and approve it if it's reasonable. Because thinking ahead to the end of the year of how many people you're realistically going to be able to serve. So just pay attention to that and know that lots of people, including HUD and the CD committee, look at these numbers and sort of see the performance of each program every single year. Next. And then duplication of benefits. There's a question about this on the application, but HUD is very concerned about making sure that no one person is getting funds for the same thing, for the same exact service from, different programs within an agency or even from, different partner agencies and stuff. So just making sure that you explain very clearly in the application what what precautions, what policies do you have in place to make sure that there are not going to be duplication of benefits? Because HUD is really serious about this, and they do not want it to happen. So just make sure you're explaining that well in your application and that you've got good procedures in place to prevent that from happening. I will hand it back to Suzanne.
All right, thank you. So amongst all the various reportings, remember we got to make HUD happy. Golden rule, HUD has the dollars, so we got to do what they tell us. Anyways, one thing that is important is the MeeBee-WeeBee reports. I think many of you in the development community are familiar with this. These are reporting forms that need to be filled out sometimes once or twice a year, depending on what HUD tells us. Anyways, these are contracts for 100,000. They would like to see how many minority-owned businesses and how many women-owned businesses are working on these projects. And so there will be reporting forms sent out probably next month to fill that out. But that is something to make sure you maintain those records. Next slide. All right, section 3. That was discussed earlier. And I think, once again, many of you are familiar with the section 3 and the various changes. For any construction activities, including housing rehab, construction, demolition, and public facilities projects. HUD would like to see at least 20% of all workers on these projects to be a Section 3 compliant. In other words, they are a low income, and that was income that was referenced earlier by Lena. They work for a Section 3 business where 51% of the owners are LMI or resident of public housing. The goal HUD has is 20%, which I know is very difficult to meet. So next slide. So if the Section 3 goals are not met, which typically happens, we need to explain to HUD, and they do read this, why. And though these are copied right from the HUD, is the agencies need to explain what outreach efforts, and you can select more than one that you're working on to help meet a Section 3 goal. So if you cannot meet the 20%, which I'm assuming nobody can, then please at least fill out this section, and this is in the application of how you're working to achieve that goal. And so any movement towards the 20%, right now we're probably like maybe 1%. But anything that we get beyond that would be a good thing for us to show HUD. And so we need to see what outreach efforts are being worked on. Next slide. Oh, I believe this is a new one from Kathy.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't miss this one when my Teams malfunctioned. This is Toby, who's filling in for the role of HUD. And he's saying we should really have the office's air quality tested. We have radon coming from below. We have asbestos in the ceilings. These are silent killers. So HUD has created some new regulations around radon and radon testing. And for these programs, for our sort of housing rehab and new construction programs, a lot of you are already doing radon testing, you're already thinking about this, but this will affect, like, if there's going to be, shelter rehab, shelter construction, public facilities. It doesn't necessarily have to be residential, any kind of buildings where people are spending more than 4 hours a day in. And if it's the type of project that's at the level of like a rehab or a even acquisition or new construction project, then you're going to have to consider radon. HUD strongly recommends testing for radon as the way to consider it, but there are some other options if that becomes problematic for different projects for various reasons. And the city will be sending out a memo that kind of summarizes HUD's longer, more complex memo. So hopefully we'll give you a more straightforward look at answer to kind of what that's going to look like. But going forward for like the housing rehab projects and new construction, they're going to be things that are a little bit different. And at some point you're probably going to have to test for radon, and we will have to look at environmental reviews and how we can do that to make sure there aren't delays. And so that can be a separate conversation kind of with those agencies who it affects the most after you look at that radon memo that we send out, and then we can have those individual conversations for what will work best for each program that we're funding. But just to let you know that there are new radon regulations, and it is going to change the process a little bit. And then we have made it to the end of our presentation. This is all of our contact info. If you have questions, about a new program, if you have questions about a program you've applied for before, but maybe you could do something different. If you're looking at the application and you're a new applicant and you're just kind of not sure what we're looking for, get in touch with us. You can get in touch with all of us, any one of us. The Duluth ComDev email address, that is Sam is operating that email address. So you'll have a lot of emails with her for submitting your documents and contracts and stuff like that. But if you're not sure who to email, you could always email that address, and we can kind of figure out who might be within the staff best suited to kind of answer your questions. So definitely make sure that you reach out. If you come across any questions, and with that, we'll open it to if anyone has questions right now that they want to ask. We can also take questions now. You can put them in the chat, or you can just jump in, whatever you're comfortable with.
Hi,
Maybe none of us. Oh, you do.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, hello. Hi. So my question is under the application instructions. It's new applicants, number 7, a description of the agency's capacity C checklist. Where would I find the checklist? Is that just part of this, or?
I have to look at the specifics. So you are looking at the application document or the application instructions?
The application instructions.
Okay. I can look at this and maybe we can move on if other people have questions, but I can try to take a look and see what you're referring to and then come back and answer it.
No worries. Thank you.
It looks like we got a question in the chat. It says in number 4, budget narrative on page 9, the source column is being automatically duplicated into the home column of the budget spreadsheet on page 11. If you delete or change it from the spreadsheet, it also deletes it from the narrative.
I can look at if there's a way to fix that. I mean, some of the application is set up to copy the totals into the other parts. But yeah, we can look at that specific one and see if something needs to be fixed. If it does, then we'll send it out again. But budget narrative page 9. Okay.
And for Suzanne, there's a question that says, can you repeat what you said on the new ESG requirement? You'd like us to send our ideas of how to best achieve those in general or for our program?
Great, yes. For the emergency solution grants requirements in the application form, there's a section where that can be responded to, where it says, these are the new requirements that I'd like us to look at. We list those 5, and then we ask, please say how you best would be able to address them. And so it's already in the application form. And we just want to make sure called out because this is a new item to the application. Hopefully that answers the question. All right, thanks, Laura. Other questions?
I'm gonna circle back to that first question, which was from, who's that from? From Kristen?
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so that is that question you had about the agency capacity checklist. That's something that goes along with the pre-award documentation that you would submit before getting your contract. So you don't, yeah.
So that wouldn't be part of the application. That's the pre-award documentation.
Well, I believe, so it is that something we're changing this year, Suzanne, to have the pre-award come in with the applications?
No, I mean, it's highly encouraged.
Mhm. I
But
think
if you
maybe we just put it in there so you would know, like,
Yeah.
this is what you're getting into, this is what you're going to have to provide, if you do get funded, just so you wouldn't be caught off guard.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from anyone? We know there's a lot of material. Fortunately, everything's on the website, and hopefully that is helpful as well. Okay. Well, team, we got like 12 minutes. We can all just stare at each other for 12 minutes waiting for questions, which I'm sure the agencies would enjoy as well. Or we can always end the meeting early. What is everyone feeling?
I say a free 12 minutes sounds great.
But Hannah, what if someone has another question that they didn't want to ask right now? What should they do?
They should email Duluth ComDev at duluthmin.gov.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Great. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Are we waiting to see if Tony has a question?
All right.
Okay, we'll leave.
Leave.
Okay, bye.